chosen hyperinflation rather than deflation. Let's start with this. So what is the underlying problem here? Simply put, the politicians in the federal government, they have a spending problem. They can't say it any more easily than that. So the federal government spends more than they make. They've accumulated all this debt. Everybody knows that they can't pay this money back. So consequently, the U.S. government, along with the Federal Reserve, in conjunction, they have to print trillions of dollars. And of course, that is inflationary. But right now, we're at a point where the rate of deficits, the rate of borrowing, so the debt accumulation, and the rate of interest payments are accelerating hard. Along with that, the rate of inflation. And right now, if you believe that the rate of inflation has cooled down, that the problem is solved, I'm just telling you that this is the calm before the storm. So in order to get an understanding of the situation, let's run some scenarios. So scenario number one, you have a situation where the politicians and the government, they can choose to cut spending massively and deflate. And in scenario number two, you have a situation where the politicians and the government, they can keep on doing what they're doing, and that's going to lead to hyperinflation. But let me tell you why the politicians and the U.S. government will not choose deflation. Now let's start with this. Let's start with the political aspect. So did you know, in order for the government to balance their budget, they would have to cut expenses by about $2 trillion a year. So the largest expense item right now for the federal government are Social Security payments. That's about $1.5 trillion a year. If you're looking at national defense, that's about $900 billion for the year. So just think about that. What kind of a politician is going to come out and say, well, in order to balance the budget, let's reduce Social Security benefits to zero?
I'm kicking off.
And that doesn't make sense because there's 72 million Americans on Social Security payments, 72 million beneficiaries, and most of them vote. So I don't know what kind of political campaign that would be for any politician. That would be political suicide. Not to mention that if you reduce Social Security benefits down to zero, that still doesn't solve the deficit problem. But you know what? That's an extreme example because I'm just singling out one category, Social Security benefits. But the reason why I did that is because that is the largest expense item for the U.S. government. Okay, so let's run another example. And let's just say that to be more rational, let's cut expenses all across the board to be more fair. Okay, so if you're going to do that, you have to take into consideration that there are certain expenses that you can't just choose to cut. You know, for example, you can't decide to cut interest payments. Yeah, payment. So with that in mind, to balance the budget, the government has to cut expenses all across the board by 40%. And that's horrible as well. 40% less for Social Security benefits.